Bhaktivedānta, Nārāyaṇa Gosvāmī Mahārāja Śrīla Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmad Bhaktivedānta Vāman Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmad Bhaktivedānta Swāmī Mahārāja Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmad Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosvāmī Prabhupāda ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Mahabhagavat Śrīla Gopis Babaji Mahārāja ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Mahārāja ki jai. Shri Rupa Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadasha Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Raya Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshada Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Vraja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Bhradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. Dandavat Pranams Braj Kishore Prabhu and Ganga Didi, Rup Manjari Didi, Madhavi Didi, Hari Bol. All right. So we've had a day gap in between our readings, so I just want to, let's see. Day before yesterday, this is the chapter we read. Gurudev says, I'm continuing to explain the third and fourth chapters of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Hearing this subject, if one develops some taste and genuine eagerness or greed for what these chapters are offering, then our association will be fully successful. All of our acharyas in our Guru Parampara were Raghunuga Vaishnavas, and more specifically, they were Rupanuga Vaishnavas. None of them were practicing only Vaidhi Bhakti. They came to this world to give Raghunuga Bhakti. In the beginning, they had to cut down all these jungles of Mayavad, Karma, Gyan, Yoga, and so on. But their real aim was to give the nectar of Raj Prem to the jivas of this world, for which we must have some eagerness. Once that greed is manifest, our path to develop Krishna consciousness will be clear. Then Gurudev goes through Mahaprabhu's instructions to Rupa Goswami, I think. Yeah, about the Bhakti Lata, I think. Anyways. Okay, and then Gurudev goes through all the different rasas. First he goes through devotees in Shantaras. And gradually goes, let's see, he says, among those, this is actually from Mahaprabhu's instructions to Rupa Goswami, but my Gurudev is explaining it. Among those who want to be devotees, a perfect Nārāyaṇa Bhakta is very rare. Among them, the Krishna Bhakta is rarer, and those with the Vraj Bhav of Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya Bhav are still rarer. Up to Vatsalya Bhav, there is no Ujjvala Ras. Ujjvala Ras is present only in Madhurya Ras. Madhurya Ras is of two kinds. In the abode of Lord Narayan, in the transcendental realm of Vaikuntha, there are only two rasas, Shanta and Dasya. In Ayodhya, there are 2.5 rasas, namely Shanta and Dasya, and half of Vatsalya. And then he explains the difference between the Vatsalya rasa in Ayodhya and in Vraj. In Vaikuntha and Ayodhya, there is Shuddha Dasya, unmixed or pure servitorship. But in Vraj, servitorship mixes either with the mood of a friend or the mood of a parent. There are unlimited servants of Nanda Baba who think, Krishna is my child. They kiss him, take him on their shoulders, and play with him. They also rebuke him at times, saying, "Oh, you are very dirty." The servants of Vaikuntha and Ayodhya could not do this. The relationship of Krishna and his servants in Vraj is very beautiful, but it is not called Unatojvala Ras. Although it is more intimate than the pure Dasya Ras of Vaikuntha and Ayodhya, still it is called Dasya Ras. Then Gurudev goes through Sakya Ras, which is higher than Dasya Ras, and he gives examples, but still that's not Unatojvala Ras. Then we come to Vatsalya Ras, and Gurudev tells sweet pastimes in Vatsalya Ras, but still this is not Unatojvala Ras. Then we come to Dwarka, where we see there's 2 kinds of Madhurya Ras, namely Sakya Ras, the love of Krishna's lawfully wedded. Now we come to Dwarka, where we see one of the 2 kinds of Madhurya Ras, namely Sakya Ras, which is the love of Krishna's lawfully wedded wives. And he explains about Rukmini, how she faints when Krishna jokes with her. And then, so Krishna told Rukmini Devi, "I will never speak like this again. I was only joking." All rasas are within Rukmini Devi, but even this affection is not called Unatojvala Ras. In these topics, we find such elevated philosophical conclusions. Try to understand them all, because they are the conclusive truths taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now we come to the Gopis' selfless love. Let me just see who else is here now. Hare Krishna, Rohit Radha Krishna ji. Okay. By his unconditional mercy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to this world to give Unatojvala Rasam Svabhakti Shriyam. I have explained that although the affection and service Krishna receives from his friends in Yashoda Maya and Nanda Baba is very elevated, still it is not Unatojvala Ras. I have discussed the Śrīmad Bhagavatam pastime wherein Sri Krishna's queen Rukmini fully gave her heart to him. The following story illustrates a pastime of Satyabhama, Sri Krishna's most dearly beloved queen. Although very exalted, her love for Sri Krishna is still not Unatojvala Ras. Satyabhama's transcendental anger. Once, and the one second, let me see. There it is, okay. Once Sri Krishna and all his queens were sitting in his assembly hall. Some fanned him with a peacock fan, others with a chamar, and others served him in various other ways. At that time, Narad Muni arrived holding a Parijatta flower from heaven. The Parijatta was so beautiful, so aromatic, and so sweet that it made all of Dwarka fragrant. Narad Muni approached Sri Krishna and requested, "I am giving this flower to you. Right now, in my presence, I would like you to give it to your most beloved queen." Sri Krishna thought, Narad is very tricky, and now he wants to create a problem for me. He knew that if he would give the flower to any queen, the others would be upset and angry with him. He wondered, why is Narad doing this? What shall I do? Narad Muni repeatedly requested Krishna to give the flower to his favorite queen, saying that this would make him very happy. Seeing no means of escape, Krishna considered, I cannot cheat Narad because he is so expert at cheating others. He took the Parijatta flower and looked towards all his beautiful queens. And he looked towards all his beautiful queens, who were all thinking, Krishna loves me the most. They were all sure of this because whenever he met with any queen, he told her, oh, you are my dearest queen. Each was convinced that she would receive the flower. Because Rukmini was the senior-most queen, Krishna placed the Parijatta flower in her hands, and she became very happy. I am so fortunate to be Krishna's most beloved, she thought. Now it is clear that I am his favorite. Seeing this, the lips of the other queens began to quiver, especially Satyabhama's. She became like a very poisonous snake that becomes highly disturbed and begins to hiss when provoked with a stick. While Narad Muni relished the same, Krishna considered that he was in very big trouble and wondered what to do. Okay, let's see this footnote. Shri Krishna wanted to give away the flower after some time and thus cheat Narad, but he allowed Narad to cheat him. This increased his own pleasure because he is Bhakta Vatsal, meaning that he always desires to please his devotee. He wanted to be defeated by Narad. Narad knew that Krishna wanted to create new pastimes. He wanted to fulfill Krishna's desire to kill Narakasura and deliver the 16,000 imprisoned princesses, and he was also eager to see these pastimes. Okay. I think, anyways, a lot of these footnotes are just not necessary. Satyabhama was so angry that she could not control or hide her emotions. She immediately left the assembly and, removing her very beautiful royal garments and ornaments, stormed into the anger room. Previously in India, the king's palace had a Kopa Bhavan, an anger room. And this way, when any queen was in an angry, sulky mood, she would take off her royal garments, dress in old, dirty, worn, and torn garments, and enter that room. Sitting or lying down, not on a bed, but on the ground, she would weep and lament. Then, if the king heard her, he would come to her, find the cause of her anger, and appease her. I think that's so cool how there's a Kopa Bhavan. Satyabhama wept loudly in the palace Kopa Bhavan, taking many long breaths. Krishna was aware of the seriousness of the problem, and therefore he left the assembly and silently entered the room. Then, sitting by her side, he tried to caress her feet, but she reacted like a furious lady snake and kicked his hands away. A lady snake. Shri Krishna was very expert at pacifying angry ladies because he had so much experience in Vrindavan with the Gopis. Because he had pacified Srimati Radhika so many times, it was easy for him to pacify Satyabhama. He did not need his flute in Dwarka because the queen's sulky mood was not so high that Krishna would need it to pacify them. He simply showed some anger in response to theirs, and they would become submissive. Once, when Krishna was glorifying the Gopis in the royal assembly, Satyabhama could not tolerate this, and she left. Krishna became angry and announced to the entire assembly, "She should get out of my palace. I don't want to see her. Her father Satyajit is wicked, and she is also wicked." Someone went to Satyabhama and told her what Krishna had said, and she immediately returned to him in a mood of submission. Her anger subsided. The Gopis, on the other hand, were not living in Krishna's palace, nor was he supporting them with food, clothing, or any oh shoot. Sorry. I have to, Haribol, Janardhan Prabhu, and Raseshwari Mataji. When I have to make sure that when my screen goes black, does it just stop sharing, or does my voice also stop? Yeah, I'm just curious. Did you miss all that while my screen went black? I need to turn on. No, I'll just make sure to keep on touching my laptop. Okay. Okay, so the gopis, on the other hand, were not living in Krishna's palace, nor was he supporting them with food, clothing, or any material facility. Therefore, they were not in any way subordinate to him. Rather, like him, they were independent. They could chastise him, whereas he could not chastise them. They could chastise him, whereas he could not chastise them. They would say, "Go from here. You do not support us. We take nothing from you. We are not obliged to you." He could not pacify them very easily. When Sri Krishna would fail in his attempts to pacify Srimati Radhika, he would take the help of Lalita and Vishaka. If this also failed, he would take the help of Subal. If that failed as well, he would take his flute and play a tune steeped in a pitiable lamentation. He would play a tune steeped in pitiable lamentation due to a mood of separation from her. Through his flute, he would tell her, "I cannot live without you. I am dying. I am dying." And then Radhika would accept him. Once, because of Krishna's behavior, Srimati Radhika was experiencing so much man, her sulky mood, that she would not come to meet with him. There doesn't need to be her there. Many days passed. Sri Krishna was grievously lamenting and wanted to find a way to pacify her. He therefore took shelter at the lotus feet of Lalita and Vishaka, who whispered some suggestions into his ear. Following their advice, he came in the morning to Srimati Radhika's home in Yavat, dressed as a student begging alms. Wearing a sacred thread and wooden sandals, and carrying an umbrella made of palm leaves, he called, "I am a brahmachari, a disciple of Gargacharya. I remain at a house only as long as a person would take to milk a cow. If I leave empty-handed, many calamities may befall you. Your cows may die, or the master of your cows may die along with all the members of your household." My God, that's pretty heavy. Jatila, Srimati Radhika's mother-in-law, saw this very beautiful student, as brilliant as the sun, calling out, as Mayavadi sannyasis do, in the name of impersonal, powerless, qualityless Brahman, "Alaka Niranjan, Alaka Niranjan." Seeing that he was begging alms, Jatila wanted to give him a donation, but he refused to take anything from her. "I cannot tell if you are married, unmarried, or if you are a widow," he said. "If there is a chaste lady who has the symptoms of being married, only then will I accept any alms." And there's a footnote here. In Vedic culture, sindur, bindi, conch shell bracelets, and red lac painted on the feet are some signs that a lady is married. Okay, why is bindi no diacritics but sindur is? These are in the same category. I'll decide what it should be later. Jatila went inside the house and told Srimati Radhika, "Dear daughter, a very powerful student yogi has come, and the rays emanating from his body are like the effulgence of the sun. He looks like a scholar of the Vedas. Perhaps he is a student of Gargacharya. Do not disobey or dishonor him. Please give him some alms." Srimati Radhika refused. "Because you always accuse me of being unchaste and speaking with boys, I will not go to him, even if he is a scholar or a yogi, or even if he has all other good qualities." Jatila repeatedly requested her, but Srimati Radhika was not willing to comply. Jatila then told Lalita and Vishaka, "She refuses to obey me. If she does not give alms to that boy, all of our cows will die, and my son Abhimanyu will also die. Please help me." Lalita and Vishaka approached Srimati Radhika and told her, "You should obey your mother-in-law and give alms to that scholar." Somehow they convinced her to agree, and therefore she took some grains, flour, ghee, dal, gold coins, and other valuable objects and placed them in a golden pot. These words should not be italicized. Wait, I'll do this. Then, completely covering her face Then, completely covering her face with her veil so that it could not be seen, she came out of her room with the help of her sakis, and very slowly approached the place where Sri Krishna was standing. She began to place the alms in his begging cloth, but Krishna refused. "I cannot accept this," he said. My sole reason for coming here from afar is to beg you to put your anger in my cloth. If you simply smile and give me your anger, I will be satisfied. Otherwise, I will die." A very slight smile appeared on Srimati Radhika's face as she upturned the pot, not in his begging cloth, but on his head. Laughing along with her sakis, she immediately returned home with him, and Krishna was satisfied. I think we might have done this drama for Gurudev once. In this way, Krishna had tried in so many ways to pacify Srimati Radhika and the Gopis. If his flute playing failed, if Lalita and Vishaka failed, if Sridham and Subal failed, and if he himself failed, he had to discover a new method. In Dwarka, however, he had no use for his flute, for Lalita and Vishaka, or for Subal and Sridham. His chastising words were threatening enough for the queens, but that was his final weapon. Here, he spoke to Satyabhama in a very mild voice. "Why are you so angry?" he asked Satyabhama. I merely gave Rukmini one flower. I will give you a tree full of Parijatta flowers and plant it in your courtyard. Please don't be angry." Satyabhama said, "Go away. I don't want to see you. You are a liar and a cheater. I cannot believe a word you say. Several times you have told each one of us that we are your dear most beloved. You say this, but you don't mean it. You cheat us all." Krishna replied, "I'm not cheating you. Have faith in me. Test me. Please give me another chance." "Yes, I'll give you one more chance. If, as you have said, you can plant a Parijatta tree full of flowers in my courtyard, then I can be happy." "Come on," Krishna said. He sat with Satyabhama on the back of his bird carrier Garuda, and together they traveled to Indra's kingdom. On the way, Krishna killed the demon Narakasura, and when he and his queen arrived, he told Indra, "You always say that I am your friend, so now I am asking you for one Parijatta tree. I will take it to earth and plant it in the courtyard of Satyabhama. Nandankanan is full of Parijatta trees. Be pleased with me and give me one tree from there." Indra replied, "Oh, you dare to speak like this to me? Leave heaven at once and return to earth. Not even one flower from the Parijatta tree, what to speak of an entire tree, can be given to worldly persons. How is it that you are able to come here? One cannot enter heaven without performing austerities for hundreds of thousands of years. You should go now." You would think Indra would have learned his lesson from the whole lifting of Govardhan Hill, anyways. Sri Krishna said, I have come here with the sole purpose of taking the tree, which I will now uproot." When Indra still refused, Krishna, who was carried by Garuda, went to Nandankanan and uprooted a Parijatta tree. Krishna then began his return journey to Dwarka, but when he was halfway there, Indra and his son and all his soldiers attacked him in an attempt to take back the tree. At that time, Krishna's son Pradyumna came there and defeated the son of Indra, Jayanta. Krishna himself defeated Indra and his soldiers, and then returned to Dwarka. One second. Dandvat pranams, Savitri Didi. Yep, Manjari came to the same. Okay, cool. Good to know. I just stopped sharing my screen. Okay, so then Krishna called out to all the queens. Krishna then called all the queens to the home of Satyabhama, and in front of them all, he planted the Parijatta tree in her garden. Satyabhama became so happy, and she tried to honor all of Krishna's other queens. If Krishna had given the tree to Rukmini, Satyabhama would have never gone to Rukmini's palace. Whereas here we see that Rukmini was present at Satyabhama's palace and was quite grave. Although she was thinking, "Oh, Krishna is more pleased with Satyabhama, who is now his most beloved wife," she did not reveal any symptoms of her unhappiness. Arrgh. 1 second. Okay. Even though there seems to be some envy in Dwarka, actually there's no chance of any inimical emotion there. Rather, this display of emotion is one of the stages of transcendental love for the pleasure of Krishna. At the same time, although Satyabhama's affection and service to Krishna is so glorious, it is not unatojula ras. This most glorious love is unique to the Gopis. Unique to the Gopis. Though there are many varieties of groups of Gopis, they can be said to be in 2 categories, Nityasiddha and Sadhansiddha. Nityasiddha. The Nityasiddha, the eternally perfect Gopis, are also of 2 kinds. Thekaya Viewha, the direct bodily expansions of Srimati Radhika, and Nityasiddha Jivas, the eternally perfect living entities manifested from Baladev Prabhu and having Gopi forms. They never at any time come in contact with the material energy. That they never have... Anyways, whatever. Then there's Sadhansiddha. All these. Okay. These Gopis are also of 2 categories. So, wait, 1 second. Nityasiddha is Thekaya Viewha and Nityasiddha. Okay. Really, Nityasiddha Jivas? That's interesting. Thekaya Viewha Jivas? No. Okay, yes. Okay, I get it. Okay, so then Sadhansiddha. These Gopis are also of 2 categories. There's Ayutaki, those who are not in groups, but who came to Prakatraj Vrindavan, where Krishna's pastimes are manifest in this world, either individually or in a pair, and Yotiki, those who came in groups. Yotiki Gopis can be further divided into 3 categories. There's the Rishichari or Munichari, the sages of Dandakaranya forest, the Shrutichari, coming from the group of personified Vedas and Shruti mantras, and those coming from Janakpur. When Ram went to Janakpur to marry Sita, the unmarried princesses there had a desire to marry him. So, Sadhansiddha, you either come alone or you come in a group. Having performed sadhan for many lifetimes, the Sadhansiddha Gopis had completely given up their anger, lust, greed, and worldly desires. Gradually, they had received nishta, steadiness, and then ruchi, taste and chanting and other devotional practices, and then asakti, natural attachment. Eventually, from the hearts of the Ragatmika Gopis, Shuddha Sattva had entered their hearts, and they attained bhav and then prem. This position is very, very rare. The devotees in Prakatraj, the place in which Krishna performs his manifest pastimes in the material world, are so rare. They have no worldly desires, pains, sufferings, or sorrows. They are not even aware of such desires or sufferings, having become freed from them in their stage of sadhan. Didn't we already go through what sadhan? Anyways, sadhan bhakti is of 2 kinds, Vaidhi and Raganuga. Ultimate bhakti is accomplished through the medium of the senses of the conditioned soul is called sadhan bhakti. That bhakti which is accomplished through the function of the senses and by which bhav bhakti is obtained is called sadhan bhakti. Okay. So they had attained. So the devotees in Prakatraj, had attained this freedom from material contamination while in the stage of sadhana, many lifetimes previous to their having become perfect. Okay. Sorry. When they had reached the most advanced stage of bhav, they took birth in Vraj and began to associate with the eternal associates of Shri Radha Krishna. Those who were already married had no connection with their husbands because Yogamaya was protecting them. The Thekaya Viewha, the bodily expansions of Srimati Radhika, they directly and freely entered Raslila and the groves of Vrindavan. No obstacles prevented them, and Yogamaya made all arrangements for them, as well as for the Nityasiddha Gopis. The Sadhansiddha Gopis, however, who had for the first time taken birth in earthly Vraj during Krishna's manifest pastimes, were stopped. Who are the Sadhansiddha Gopis? They had worshipped Katyayani with the hope of receiving a benediction that Sri Krishna would become their beloved. They had prayed, Katyayani Mahamaye, right? It's not Mahamaya. Mahayogena Dishwari Nanda Gopa Sutang Devi Patim Me Kurute Namaha. I have to check. I think it's Mahamaya. Please give me the benediction that Krishna will become my husband. Actually, the gopis were young and had no real idea of having Krishna as a husband. They had no idea of husband. They had seen that their parents were married. They had seen that their relatives were living with their own husbands. Thus, being attracted to Krishna's enchanting beauty, they're simply thinking of him as their play husband. They wanted him only as their beloved. Some of the Sadhansiddha Gopis had taken birth in Vraj from the womb of Gopis. They were each married to one of the Gopas, and due to hearing the glories of Sri Krishna, they developed great affection for him and a desire to meet with him. On the night of the Ras Leela, when they heard the sound of his flute, they made an attempt to meet him, but they were stopped by their husbands. Other Sadhansiddha Gopis, those who had sufficient association with the Nityasiddha Gopis, went to meet with Sri Krishna without restriction. Only those who had recently arrived there and those who had taken birth for the first time in Krishna's manifest pastimes on earth were checked. Why were they checked? It is stated in Śrīmad Bhagavatam, a slight kashai, a slight obstacle remained in their hearts, for which they had to become free. Kashai means obstacle? I'll check this later. Thus, when their husbands checked them, their hearts burned in the fire of separation. The intensity of their feelings of separation from Krishna burnt any ashubha, any inauspiciousness still present in their hearts. In their meditation, they took Krishna into their hearts and embraced him there so tightly that in that meeting with him, their shubha, their auspiciousness, also disappeared. There's a footnote here. Srila Shukadeva Gosvāmī hides the confidential desired goal of the gopis for materialistic people. By the words dusaha, etc., he expresses the external meaning as well as the deeper inner meaning that is dear to devotees who have knowledge of confidential devotional service. I don't actually get this footnote. Anyways, okay. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left the dacoits of Jagai and Madhai, he did not have to cut off their heads. No weapon was used. Rather, he changed their moods and they began a new life. They did not continue their past activities because all results of their sinful and pious activities had been burnt. It is necessary to understand that worldly pious and impious activities are both binding because they both impede one in rendering service to Sri Krishna. In the stage of sadhana, reactions to both good and bad activities are destroyed. In Sanskrit, good and bad activities are called punya, pious activities, and pap, sins. When the reactions to these two types of activities, with the reactions to these two types of activities awaiting us, we will have to take birth again and again. So they will have to be given up, and then we will attain asakti, and then bhav. The sadhan siddha gopis who had recently taken birth in Braj had already passed through all these stages and entered into the wombs of gopis. If there were no pious and impious activities, no punya or pap, then what was burned? An analogy is given of ripe and unripe mangoes. Ripe mangoes may be eaten immediately, whereas unripe mangoes require heating so that they may soon ripen. Similarly, those gopis who had sufficient eagerness could immediately join the ras dance, while others, feeling the intense burning heat of separation from Krishna, when they were stopped by their relatives, became qualified to meet with him on another night. Okay. There needs to be a note here that this footnote 27 continues on. It should say continued on next page or something. Okay. A trick of Yogamaya. As mentioned earlier, some of the sadhan siddha gopis had newly arrived in, some of the sadhan siddha gopis had newly arrived in Braj and had never personally met Krishna. They had only seen him from afar. Some had come originally from Indraprastha, and were newly married to Vraj Gopas. Thus they had lived in Vraj for only a few months or a few years. Some had come from other parts of Vraj and had recently come to Nandagaon and Yavat through their marriage. Among these sadhan siddha gopis, those who had not sufficient association with the nitya siddha gopis could not freely meet with Krishna, although they wanted to. Then when they took him into their hearts by their intense feeling of separation from him and strongly embraced him there, they became qualified to meet him on another night. When the Gopis were still little children, Yogamaya played a trick on Brahma by entering his mind. She made him desire to personally induce Krishna to perform further pastimes. By her influence, he thought, if I steal his calves and cowherd boys, what will he do? He skillfully stole them and placed them in a cave for 1 year. At the end of that time, he came to see what Krishna was doing, and he became quite puzzled. Krishna was playing as usual. He had expanded into millions of calves and cowherd boys and was playing with them daily as he always had, as if nothing had happened. He then gave Brahma the mercy to realize that all the calves and friends were his own expansions. Why did Krishna perform this pastime with Brahma? One reason was that all the cows had more affection for Krishna than for their calves. He desired that he would become their calf. They desired this, and he had to fulfill their desire. So Krishna had to fulfill the desire of all the cows. When Krishna came home in the evening after cow herding, the elderly gopis would kiss him with great motherly love. But after a moment, he would run into Mother Yashoda's home and disappear from their vision. They wanted him as their son, so that they could unrestrictedly offer him their heartfelt motherly affection. Krishna had to fulfill their desire as well. More importantly, all the girls of Vraj wanted Krishna as their beloved. Therefore, when he took the individual forms of millions of cowherd boys, there should be a comma here. Therefore, when he took the individual forms of all the millions of cowherd boys, Purnamasi told everyone that the year was auspicious for everyone's marriages. The young gopis were thus married to those gopas who were actually expansions of Krishna. So really, all the gopis married Krishna. To reach that goal, we should perform neither material, pious, nor impious activities. We must try to engage all our activities in Krishna's service. If we perform activities for ourselves or for the pleasure of others, in order to do good for them materially. This is called pious activities, and this will create obstacles in our spiritual development. If we make a temple in order to show the world that we are performing great work and think, I am the creator of this temple, I will receive so much name and fame, this will also be an obstacle for our bhakti. We must act only to please Krishna, Gurudev, and pure devotees. If at the time of sadhana we engage in activities other than pleasing Krishna, our sadhana becomes hampered and we will not be able to enter Vraj. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains the meaning of sadhana bhakti, and it is necessary that we acquaint ourselves with its true meaning. Sometimes we chant Harinam with our hearts full of worldly desires and anarthas. We do not know what is sadhana bhajan, or what is love and affection for Shri Krishna. We only chant because our Guru has told us that by chanting Harinam, everything auspicious will be achieved. This is surely correct, but at the same time, our Harinam chanting should be pure and with some realization of our relationship with Krishna. We must give up all worldly desires, all anarthas, and all offenses, and even the desire for Krishna to be our husband. That will be real sadhana. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavatam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. It's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1111. Not 111. Uttama Bhakti, our pure devotional service, is the cultivation of activities which are meant exclusively for the pleasure of Shri Krishna. In other words, it is the uninterrupted flow of service to Shri Krishna, performed through all endeavors of the body, mind, and speech, and through the expression of various spiritual sentiments, bhavs. It is not covered by jnana and karma, and it is devoid of all desires other than the aspiration to bring happiness to Shri Krishna. All kinds of worldly desires, as well as desires to achieve Vaikuntha or Dwarka, should be given up. The practitioner of pure sadhana bhakti does not cover his bhakti by taking the help of karma, fruit of activities, and jnana, the philosophy of impersonalism. He has no desire other than the desire to please Krishna and his pure devotees, and to attain pure bhakti. He engages his mind, body, and words in Krishna's service, and also serves him by his moods. He avoids any activity that will create an obstacle in his bhakti. Such pure activity is called pure sadhana bhakti. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22.105. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava sasadana bhida nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. When transcendental devotional service by which love for Krishna is attained is executed by the senses, it is called sadhana bhakti, or the regulative discharge of devotional service. Such devotion externally exists within the hearts of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional service and practice. Let us remember this philosophical truth, keeping it in our hearts. Let us pray to become qualified to understand it. If you do not understand, you can inquire from senior Vaishnavas. And if you are still not satisfied, you may come to me with your questions, and I will try to answer them. These meetings are very good and rare opportunities to discuss these highest topics. If you lose this opportunity, it may be lost forever. It is very rare to have this association, so try to make it successful. Do not miss even a word. By this, you will see yourself developing towards perfection in bhakti.
Okay. Wow, you're still all there. I don't know. Did it freeze before it stopped? Before I finished the chapter? Because yeah, actually, I ran out of battery. My computer shut off. Yeah, I don't know if I finished before the screen shut off. Anyways, I'll just read the last couple sentences just in case. So Gurudev said that these meetings are very good and rare opportunities to discuss these highest of topics. If you lose this opportunity, it may be lost forever. It is very rare to have this association, so try to make it successful. Do not miss even a word. By this, you will see yourself developing towards perfection and bhakti. That was the end of that chapter. And tomorrow we will be reading Supreme Chastity, chanting with relationship. Chanting with relationship. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tasting Onatojala Ras. Spiritual chastity. The most chaste ladies. Uddhav's lesson in Vrindavan. All these definition of Onatojala. Yeah, all those topics will be tomorrow. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's gift. Yeah. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. जय श्री श्री गुरु गौरांग गंधावी के गिरिधारी शिष्य राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय, श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जय, नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शतर शतश्मार भक्तिवेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय, नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद श्री भक्तिवेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय, नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद श्री भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद श्री भक्ति विज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय, नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद श्री भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय, नितिल प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गोक्षर बाबूजी महाराज की जय, नितिल प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय, नितिल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय, श्री रूपनु गौरी गुरु वर्ग की जय, श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ, श्री जीव गोपाल पतदास रघुनाथ शार गोसाई प्रभु की जय, श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय, नामचय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय, सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय, राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज यमुना गंगा तुलसी भक्ति देवी की जय, श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. धन्यवाद. प्रणाम everybody. Vanchakal Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavascha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavadaya Namo Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Dhanyavad. Pranam everybody. Hari Bol. See you all tomorrow.